Beneath the badged hero within Detective Sarah Holt had seen her share of darkness. A decorated officer in the quiet town of Briar Ridge, she had built her reputation on bravery, instinct, and heart. To her colleagues, she was a tenacious investigator. To her community, she was a symbol of trust. But to her family, she was just mom or sweetheart to her husband. Greg Holt, a beloved high school literature teacher with a passion for Shakespeare, crossword puzzles, and weekend hikes in the misty foothills that ringed their town. Briar Ridge was the kind of town that still held pie baking contests and hosted Sunday farmers markets. It had tree-lined streets, a historic main square, and a low crime rate that made Sarah's job relatively peaceful. Her days were filled with the routine challenges of small-town policing, petty thefts, neighborhood disputes, teenage mischief. But even in calm waters, storms can brew beneath the surface. Everything changed when Emma Bailey, a bright and spirited 21-year-old college student, went missing. The initial report didn't raise many red flags. Emma had missed a class, then a shift at the local bookstore. Her roommate assumed she was staying with her boyfriend. Her phone went straight to voicemail, and social media went dark. A day passed, then two. Emma's parents filed a missing persons report on the third day, and that's when Sarah stepped in. She had worked similar cases before, but something about this one unsettled her. Emma was responsible, grounded, the kind of girl who sent her mom a goodnight text every evening. Sarah drove out to the campus with her partner, Detective Miles Tanner. Miles was a good cop with a dry sense of humor and an encyclopedic knowledge of crime scene protocol. He'd worked with Sarah for nearly a decade, and they had a rhythm that most partners only dream of. Emma's dorm room offered little. Her bed was made, books stacked neatly on her desk, a half-finished cup of tea still sitting on the windowsill. The only oddity was a notebook tucked beneath her pillow, filled with poetry scribbled in neat cursive. Most of it was about longing, shadows, and a faceless man. "Anything jump out at you?" Miles asked as he flipped through her planner. Sarah ran her fingers over a page marked with a flyer for a poetry night at Briar Ridge High School, an event hosted just a few nights prior. Her brow furrowed. "Greg ran this," she said, voice low. "Your husband?" "Yeah. He does it every semester for the seniors. Local communities invited. Emma must have attended." Miles gave her a sideways glance, but said nothing. It was a small town. Overlaps like this weren't unusual. Still, Sarah made a mental note. That night, she brought it up at dinner. "Greg, do you remember a girl named Emma Bailey from your poetry night?" Greg paused mid-bite. "Emma? Yes, I think so. Pretty sharp. She asked about that Sylvia Plath poem I read. Dark stuff for someone so young." "Why? She's missing." Greg blinked, clearly surprised. "God, that's awful. I hope she turns up safe." Sarah nodded. She wanted to believe him. She needed to. But as an officer, she'd learned long ago that truth often wore familiar faces. The next morning brought worse news. Another girl had disappeared. Rachel Dean, a junior at Briar Ridge College, had vanished on her morning jog. Her water bottle was found beside the trail. No signs of a struggle. No witnesses. Rachel was brunette, in her early 20s, just like Emma. Sarah felt something stir in her gut. It wasn't just coincidence. These disappearances weren't random. She began compiling case files, pinning locations on the precinct's corkboard map. A pattern began to emerge. Each victim had attended some kind of community event, most hosted by or near the high school. She dug into the event logs, poetry readings, book fairs, volunteer drives. Greg had volunteered at every single one. Sarah tried to dismiss it. Her husband was a teacher, for God's sake, loved by students, praised by peers. He wrote her love letters in their daughter's lunchbox napkins. But something about the way he spoke of Emma, the detail, the tone, pricked at her mind. That weekend, Sarah found herself staring at their hallway bookshelf. Greg's poetry books lined the upper shelf. She pulled down a worn copy of Whitman's Leaves of Grass. A paper slipped out and floated to the floor. It was a flyer for the recent poetry night. Annotated in the margins were notes, descriptions of attendees. One line read, "Emma B., curious eyes, loves Plath, too sad for her own good." Sarah stood frozen. That night, Greg came to bed later than usual. He kissed her shoulder and whispered, "You okay? You've been quiet lately." "Just tired," she lied. But her heart had started to crack. Her instincts, honed over years of policing, screamed that something was very wrong. She couldn't ignore them anymore. Patterns in the shadows. Investigation escalated quickly after Rachel Dean's disappearance. A town that had prided itself on peace now found itself on edge. Police presence increased. Volunteers canvassed trails and backroads. News vans lined Main Street. Despite the pressure, Sarah Holt remained composed outwardly, at least internally. Her soul churned. Rachel's case mirrored Emma's in too many ways. No signs of forced entry or struggle. Personal effects left behind. And again, no witnesses. But Rachel's smartwatch had one clue: a record of her heart rate spiking abruptly. Before the signal went dead, her last location pinged just a few blocks from the high school library near the trail Greg often walked. Sarah didn't want to believe what her mind was piecing together. But denial was a dangerous thing for a detective. Instead, she doubled down on logic, data, and patterns. She cross-referenced timelines, mapped victim activity, reviewed attendance rosters from school events, and requested security footage. Then came the third disappearance. 22-year-old Natalie Cho had vanished after volunteering at a literacy drive. She was last seen around 6:15 p.m., leaving the community center. Her car was found untouched in the parking lot. Inside, her phone, a warm coffee cup, and her purse. Sarah was the first to arrive at the scene. Everything screamed organized abduction. The car was unlocked, but not forced. The coffee cup still steamed, meaning the abduction was immediate. Whoever had taken Natalie had been watching, waiting. Miles approached as Sarah stood silently beside the car. "This isn't random," he said grimly. "He's got a type, a timeline. We've got a serial offender. Maybe worse." Sarah nodded. 3 brunettes, ages 20 to 22, all involved in community or literary programs, all last seen near the school. She didn't say the name in her mind, but it was there, sharp and cold. Greg. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She lay next to Greg, listening to his even breathing. His arm rested across her side, as though nothing had changed. Her thoughts drifted to their early years meeting. At a town fundraiser, his corny jokes, his smile, the wedding under an autumn canopy of leaves. He had been gentle, so attentive. When Lily was born, he wept at the sight of her tiny hands. Could a man so kind commit such evil? By morning, the question had taken root like poison ivy in her chest. She called in a favor from a tech contact in cyber forensics. Together, they quietly accessed digital logs from the school Wi-Fi server. Students had to sign in using student IDs. Staff had access privileges. Sarah looked for one name: Greg Holt. He had signed into the campus Wi-Fi during all 3 event nights, but that wasn't all. Between 6:20 p.m. and 6:45 p.m. on the night Natalie went missing, Greg's device disconnected from the school network exactly when she vanished. Sarah's hands trembled. Still, she needed more. Circumstantial evidence wasn't enough. If she made an accusation, she could ruin an innocent man's life, her husband's, her daughter's father. She needed something irrefutable. That's when she decided to check his study. While Greg took Lily to her violin lesson, Sarah slipped into his home office. It was tidy too tidy. The top drawers of his desk contained lesson plans and essays. She found a USB drive taped beneath the bottom drawer. Her breath caught. She plugged it into her laptop. There were dozens of files, journal entries, photographs, some of the victims. At first, she thought maybe they were student projects, but the tone, the language, she smiled at me like she knew I existed. It was a mistake. They all make that mistake. They don't know who I am until it's too late. There were detailed notes, descriptions of each victim's clothing, perfume, the way they laughed. It was methodical, obsessive, a mind spiraling through fantasy and violence. Sarah backed away from the desk, bile rising in her throat. Her hands itched to dial 911, but she couldn't. Not yet. Not without a plan, not without protecting Lily. Greg had never been violent at home, but she knew now that didn't mean he wasn't capable of it. The next day, Sarah requested leave under the guise of emotional burnout. The chief agreed. She used her time to quietly gather more evidence. She installed a hidden camera in Greg's study. She checked his vehicle logs. She found faint traces of dirt and lavender in the trunk. Lavender. It was found on Emma's body. She contacted Rachel's parents. Did she ever mention meeting anyone unusual at school events? Rachel's mother paused. Just a man who talked to her about poetry. Said he reminded her of her dad. Sarah fought to keep her voice steady. Do you know his name? I think she said Mr. Holt. That night, Sarah locked the door to their bedroom and stood in front of the mirror, gripping the sink. She was trained for this, years of police academy, field work, criminal psychology. But nothing prepared her for this war inside her chest. She loved him. She feared him. She had to stop him. As dawn broke, Sarah packed a go bag for Lily and hid it in her car. She left a sealed letter in her desk at the precinct labeled to Chief Randall in case I'm gone. And then she made one more phone call to Linda Ramos, her retired mentor. Linda, she whispered, I think my husband is the killer. The silent alibi-retired Chief Linda Ramos didn't speak for a long time. After Sarah told her everything, you need to breathe, Sarah. Linda finally said over the phone. Her voice was low, measured. Then you need to get control. Because what you just told me, if it's true, is going to shatter this town. And it's going to shatter you. Sarah nodded, though no one could see it. I know. But if I don't do this right, I could lose more than my husband. I could lose my daughter, my job, my sanity. You already know what you have to do. The question is, are you willing to do it? Sarah spent the next 24 hours in meticulous preparation. She retrieved the footage from the hidden camera in Greg's study. In it, he sat alone, writing in a leather-bound journal. He talked softly to himself about perfection, about women who led him on, about the need to finish what he started. It wasn't an outright confession, but it was damning. Sarah scheduled a quiet meeting with Miles in a remote part of town, an old park they used to patrol. When they were rookies, I need your help, she said. But off the record, Miles narrowed his eyes. This about Greg. Her silence was answer enough. Damn, Sarah, you sure? I wish I wasn't. She handed him a flash drive. Don't look at it until I'm gone. Just know that if anything happens to me, you take this to the chief. Miles put a hand on her shoulder. Be careful. Don't let this eat you alive. Sarah forced a smile. It already has. Back home, Greg acted like everything was normal. He cooked her favorite meal, rosemary chicken with roasted carrots, and poured her a glass of wine. He watched her closely as they ate. You've been quiet lately, he said. Everything okay at work? Sarah nodded. Just a lot on my mind. You know, you can talk to me about anything. Her stomach churned. I know. He leaned in and kissed her hand. His touch was gentle, familiar, chilling. After dinner, while Greg graded papers, Sarah tucked Lily into bed. Mom, are you sad? Lily asked, her small hand clutching Sarah's. Sarah kissed her forehead. A little. But I'm okay, baby. I just have to be strong for a while, like I've always taught you. That night, Sarah sat in the living room, staring at the family portrait above the fireplace. Greg's eyes seemed to follow her. In her lap, she clutched the leather-bound journal she had secretly removed from his study. She turned the pages again. Most were abstract ramblings, but one page, dated a week before Emma Bailey's disappearance, chilled her. She thinks her smile disarms me, but I see through it. They all smile before they scream. Another entry. The day after Natalie went missing, it's becoming harder to stop, but it feels like a kind of justice, like I'm restoring balance. Sarah closed the book, her fingers trembling. It was timed out the next morning. She told Greg she had an early staff meeting. Instead, she went to the police station and signed out a GPS tracker. She placed it under his car. Then, she used her precinct key to discreetly copy the contents of the journal and the USB to an encrypt evidence folder. When she returned home, Greg was in the backyard, pruning the lavender bushes. He smiled as she approached. It's almost in full bloom, he said cheerfully. Lily wants to make sachets again. Sarah forced a nod. She loves that. Inside, her soul cracked. That night, Greg told Sarah he had a staff meeting the next morning before school. Sarah pretended not to notice the lie. He never had meetings before 8:30 at 6:15 a.m. His car pulled out of the driveway. Sarah waited 2 minutes, then checked the tracker. He wasn't going to the school. He was heading west toward Briar Ridge Forest. She called Miles. Tracker shows he's en route to a secluded area near the water treatment plant. That's where the old trails are. You want backup? Sarah paused. Not yet. I'm going alone. Sarah, just give me an hour. If I don't check in by then, you call everyone. The forest was damp from the morning dew. Fog clung low to the ground. Sarah parked a quarter-mile away and moved quietly, her service weapon holstered at her side. She followed the GPS signal to a secluded glade. Greg's car sat parked by the edge of a narrow trail nearby. He knelt in the dirt with a shovel. Sarah stepped forward, quietly. Don't move. Greg froze. He didn't turn around. Put the shovel down, Greg. Slowly. He obeyed. Then, softly, I knew you'd come. I saw the signs. You've been watching me. Sarah's voice cracked. What is this? He stood, mud streaked across his pants. A mistake. All of it. But I couldn't stop. I tried. Tears welled in her eyes. Why? Greg looked up, and the man she had loved was gone. In his place stood a stranger wrapped in regret and delusion. Because no one sees us, Sarah. The quiet ones. The ones who give and give until we break. They used me up, and I took it back. Piece by piece. She raised her weapon. You're under arrest. He didn't resist. He just nodded. Thank you for stopping me. Sarah's hands trembled as she cuffed him. I loved you, she whispered. I know, he replied. That's what made me wait for you. 1 hour later, Miles and the team arrived. In the glade. Under the soil Greg had been digging, they found a box. Inside it, trophies, bracelets, hair clips, photographs, things that belonged to girls who would never come home. Sarah stood with Lily that night, watching the sun set behind the hills. Her daughter didn't know yet, but she would, and Sarah would be there to help her through it. Because some truths demand sacrifice, and some heroes wear badges and bear the deepest scars beneath them. A voice in the dark. Next few days unfolded. In a blur, Greg Holt was in custody. The news broke faster than Sarah could prepare for it. Within hours, local headlines read, Teacher, husband of detective arrested in serial disappearances. By noon, it hit the national feeds. Sarah's phone lit up with calls, texts, voicemails, some supportive, many invasive. She turned them all off. The station suspended her from active duty, pending internal review. Though she'd played a pivotal role in capturing Greg, protocol demanded investigation. The unspoken question lingered in every whispered hallway and email thread. How could she not have known? Linda Ramos visited her that evening. Sarah sat curled up on the living room couch, the house eerily quiet. Lily was staying with Sarah's sister, unaware of the storm that had shattered her world. I'm proud of you, Linda said softly. Sarah stared ahead. I feel like I've lost everything. No, Linda said. You lost something that wasn't real. But you still have the courage it took to face this. That's who you really are. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. What if I missed something? You found the truth, Linda replied. And you didn't run from it. You didn't bury it to protect yourself. That matters. Greg's confession had unlocked more than a case file. It unearthed a haunting network of silence. Over the following weeks, investigators discovered more chilling details. Greg had cataloged every victim. There were videos, journals, even recordings stored in cloud folders under aliases. Sarah volunteered to help analyze the material against the advice of nearly everyone around her. I have to face it, she said when Miles protested. I have to look them in the eyes, even if it's only on video. I have to bear witness. So she did. Hour after hour, she sat in a secure room at the precinct, headphones on, logging files, identifying the victims' voices, faces, fears. She made notes, flagged moments, and typed their names gently. She whispered apologies to every screen. One afternoon, she found a video that stopped her cold. Greg had been speaking into a camera journal style. The footage was dated only 3 days before his arrest. He was calm. To calm, They think monsters look like shadows, he said. But shadows don't smile. Shadows don't blend. The worst monsters blend so well, you invite them into your home, into your bed. He leaned forward. But the worst part, I didn't want to stop, not really. And if Sarah hadn't caught me, I don't think I ever would have. Sarah felt her breath hitch in her chest. She hit pause. The room spun. Linda was right. She hadn't just found the truth, she had stopped the nightmare. No one else would. And no one else had. Greg's trial came quickly. The evidence was overwhelming. His defense team didn't even try to deny his guilt. They focused instead on mental health, childhood trauma, dissociation. Sarah sat through every day of the trial. She wore her badge in her pocket, not on her chest. She didn't speak to the media. She kept her eyes on the families of the victims. She nodded at them when they cried. She stood when they entered. She mourned with them on the final day during sentencing. The judge asked if anyone wished to speak. One by one, the victims' families stepped forward. Their voices were trembling but strong. Then, the room grew silent. Sarah stood. Gasps echoed. Reporters scribbled. But she didn't care. She stepped to the podium, looked at Greg, now thin, pale, empty, and then turned to the courtroom. My name is Sarah Holt. I am a detective, a mother, a woman who loved a man who wore a mask so well, even I didn't see the monster beneath it. But I am not here today as his wife. I am here as someone who believes truth can break chains, that silence empowers evil, that courage is doing the right thing, even when it breaks you. I will carry the shame of his actions, the grief of these families, and the burden of being the one who slept beside a killer. But I will also carry this truth. I helped stop him, and I will never stop fighting for those he hurt. Never. When she sat down, the room rose with her. Greg never looked up. He was sentenced to multiple life terms without the possibility of parole. Sarah walked out of the courthouse, the autumn wind brushing her face. Reporters clamored. She ignored them. All that evening, she held Lily close. Her daughter didn't ask about the trial. She just said, "I missed you, Mom." Sarah smiled. "I'm here now, baby. I'm not going anywhere." Because the voice inside her, so long buried beneath duty, love, fear, was now strong, clear, unshakable. Shattered glass days after Greg's sentencing were quiet, but it was the kind of quiet that follows a storm, not peace. Sarah returned home to a house that no longer felt like her own. The photos on the wall mocked her. The scent of Greg's cologne still lingered in the closet. Even Lily's laughter, though precious, echoed through rooms that once hummed with normalcy but now felt hollow. The department cleared her of wrongdoing. Internal Affairs concluded she had acted ethically and courageously. Yet, Sarah chose not to return, at least not yet. "I need space," she told the chief. "Time to understand who I am now." She wasn't sure what that meant, but she knew she couldn't wear the badge, not until she was certain it still belonged to her. The town of Briar Ridge wasn't sure what to do with her. Some looked at her with admiration, others with suspicion. Still others avoided eye contact altogether, as if her presence reminded them of something too dark to acknowledge. At the grocery store, an old neighbor reached for a carton of milk, glanced at her, and froze. "Sarah, I can't imagine." She offered a weary smile. "Me neither." The woman nodded, then fled down another aisle. Sarah let out a breath. Even her innocence carried weight now. But there were moments of light. One afternoon, Sarah received a letter from the sister of one of the victims, Rachel Dean. It read, "I don't blame you. I thank you. You could have turned away. You could have made excuses. Instead, you listened to your gut. Even when it hurt, you gave us closure. You gave us truth." Sarah wept, not out of sadness, but out of relief. For the first time, someone had acknowledged the pain she carried, not as guilt but as courage. She began volunteering at a local shelter for women in crisis. At first, she kept her identity quiet, but word spread. One night, after a support group meeting, a young woman lingered behind. "I know who you are," she said softly. "I used to think monsters looked like strangers, but after what happened, I don't know anymore." Sarah nodded. "They can look like anyone, but so can heroes." The woman asked, "How did you survive it?" Sarah replied, "I didn't. Not all of me. but the part that mattered, the part that could still love, still protect, that part made it. Winter came. Snow blanketed Briar Ridge in deceptive calm. Sarah decorated the house with Lily, strung lights along the porch, baked cookies with neighbors. Normalcy, or a version of it, but the wound still throbbed beneath the surface. One night, she found herself in Greg's study. She hadn't entered it since his arrest. It was exactly as he left it. She sat in his old chair and opened a drawer. Inside, among pens and paper clips, was a letter addressed to her. Sarah, you were always the best of us. I tried to keep that part of myself hidden because I didn't want to lose you. But the truth is, it was never yours to carry. I never deserved your love, and you never deserved the burden I became. I hope someday you remember me as I was when we met before I let the darkness win. She stared at it for a long time. Then she set it aflame in the fireplace. He didn't get to choose how she remembered him. She would define her own story now. Spring arrived. Sarah began writing. At first, just thoughts in a journal, then essays, then, with encouragement from Linda and Miles, she submitted an op-ed to a national publication. Its title, When the Monster Wears a Wedding Ring. It went viral. Messages flooded in from survivors, from women who feared their partners, from fellow officers who had faced similar betrayals. The ripple Sarah had feared became a wave of truth. She realized something profound. Her story wasn't just hers. It belonged to every person who'd been blindsided by betrayal and found a way to keep breathing. She was invited to speak at a criminal justice symposium, then a trauma conference, then a national news interview. Each time, she wore a simple necklace, her old badge, now mounted as a pendant, not as a reminder of what she'd lost but of what she'd reclaimed. Strength, voice, conviction. One evening, after putting Lily to bed, Sarah stepped out onto the porch and looked up at the stars, the same stars she and Greg once gazed at, dreaming of their future. Now, she dreamed of something else. Justice that wasn't just about punishment, but about protection. Truth that didn't hide behind fear, and healing not as a finish line, but a journey. She whispered into the night, I'm still here, and I'm not afraid anymore. The light beyond. 6 months later, Sarah Holt stood at the podium of the National Women in Law Enforcement Conference in Washington, D.C., her badge pendant glinting under the stage lights. Behind her were flags of every state. In front of her, hundreds of women in uniform, rookies, veterans, chiefs, some with medals, some with scars, all listening. I never thought I'd be here, Sarah began. Not after what happened, not after what I had to do, but surviving the storm teaches you something about strength, about silence, and about what it takes to start over. Her voice didn't shake. She told them everything not as a victim, but as a woman who chose truth over comfort, justice over fear. She spoke about betrayal, resilience, and the hidden price of loyalty. She ended with the words that had become her anchor. You can lose everything and still rise. You can shatter and still protect others with your pieces. And when you do, when you choose courage, you light the path for those still walking in the dark. The audience stood. Many wept. Sarah stepped off the stage, not to applause, but to a chorus of hands reaching out. Some to thank her, others to simply hold on. Later that evening, she met Miles and Linda in the hotel cafe. You were amazing, Linda said, squeezing her hand. You made them believe again. You made me believe again. Miles raised a glass to truth, and to the woman who reminds us it's always worth chasing. Sarah smiled. It was genuine, warm. To the ones who stand even when they have every reason to fall. Back in Briar Ridge, Sarah's house had changed. The walls were brighter, the shadows less heavy. She'd repainted Lily's room a soft lavender. She planted a garden out back, a messy patchwork of vegetables and wildflowers. Chaos made beautiful by care. On the side table set a framed photo, Sarah and Lily in the backyard, muddy and laughing, a tangle of roots in their hands. Beneath it, a quote, "She who is brave is free." Sarah had started a non-profit, the Phoenix Initiative, dedicated to supporting survivors of domestic betrayal and emotional trauma. It offered counseling, legal advocacy, and empowerment workshops. The first one was hosted in the same community center where Natalie Cho had once volunteered. It was packed. She returned to the police department not as a detective, but as a consultant. She trained recruits, rewrote procedures on internal misconduct, and helped create a protocol for officers who reported suspected abuse within their own families. The old guard welcomed her with open arms. The younger officers looked at her like a legend. She didn't wear the uniform anymore, but she wore the legacy. On the anniversary of Greg's arrest, Sarah visited the memorial garden the town had erected for the victims Emma, Rachel, Natalie, and the others whose names had been uncovered in Greg's files. She placed a single white rose beneath each name. Lily stood beside her, now 11, quiet and thoughtful. "Are you sad, Mom?" she asked. Sarah considered the question. "Yes," she said, "but I'm also proud. Because those girls, they weren't forgotten. And because we're still here, growing, living, loving." Lily took her hand. "Like the garden." Sarah nodded. "Exactly like the garden." That night, Sarah wrote the final words of her memoir. "In losing the man I thought I loved, I found the woman I was meant to become, not just beneath the badge, but beyond it." She closed the laptop, exhaled, and walked outside. The stars were out. The same stars that once bore witness to love, then loss, and now rebirth. She looked up. "I'm still here," she whispered again. "And now I know why." The end.